Okay, this video is called How Do You Find Good Health Information? And I'd say, first of all, conventional books always stink for chronic diseases. And you should ask yourself, how could I say these things and be so confident? And what I'm trying to tell you is use your brain. It's obvious. The reason they call a disease chronic, they only call a disease chronic when they can't cure it. So when they call a disease chronic, what they're telling you is, we can't cure this disease. Okay, so when you talk about hypertension in conventional medicine, it's a chronic condition. They tell you they don't know the cause 95% of the time, and they can't cure it. But when you talk about nutritional medicine, they say, yeah, we cure hypertension in 5 seconds. McDougall, Pritikin, they say we easily cure at least 90% of our hypertensive patients putting on a low-fat vegan diet. Okay. All right, so you know the conventional books, they all suck. And then the other thing to ask yourself is there's so many high IQ doctors. How come hardly any of them write a book? I've written over 30 books. Why is it that all these high IQ doctors in conventional medicine almost never write a book? And I'll tell you why. Because they all read conventional literature. And if you read conventional literature, it's pretty good at saying what it says. There's no point in writing anything. You have to know information outside of conventional literature, conventional books. Otherwise, why repeat what's already been done? So what most people do, even the highest IQs, they just learn the conventional stuff, pass their boards, do what they have to do to generate a billing code, make their money, enjoy their life. Okay? But when you start reading outside, looking at all the nutritional literature, toxicology literature, epidemiology literature, you realize the conventional medical literature, it's a joke. It's like a comic book. Okay, so now we're talking about how do you find good information. First of all, you want to find the books by outsiders. Now, outsiders will often write books that are a little stupid, but basically everything good is written by the outsiders. People who are a little bit ostracized, a little bit pissed off, or a little bit ignored, or a little bit shadow banned, censored, something like that, because they're much, much, much more likely to tell you the truth. You can't get invited on the bro science circuit if you don't lie about certain things. You can't get invited on the high-fat phony lecture circuit unless you lie about certain things. So you have to, so you're going to end up, the people that are most likely to tell you the truth are also the ones that are outcasts and ostracized, like myself, for example. Okay? There has to be no money involved. The speaker has to have seriously studied the subject. Okay, when somebody's promoting something or selling something, they're always going to lie about that thing or at least exaggerate it. You know, the same person who exaggerates and lies about one thing, they can be good, really good about something else, but it's hard to know. There's some people who promote and sell so much stuff that you don't know when they're telling the truth or when they're lying, and that makes it, drains your energy to have to double check everything they say. The logic of what they're saying should be plausible. You know, if somebody says, well, saturated fat when it comes from an animal is bad, but when it comes from a plant, it's good. You know, that's BS. You know, why is the sat fat magic when it comes from a plant? You want to see consilience, meaning that there's multiple independent sources of information that all support the same conclusion. Consilience is a bunch of smaller pieces of evidence coming together to support a bigger conclusion. You can search YouTube for videos on a topic, and you'll often find that 9 out of 10 YouTube videos on subtopic. Let's say you want to study Parkinson's disease. 9 out of 10 will be pretty stupid, then one of them will be good. But the benefit of doing that is that 10th one that's good not only will often teach you something useful, it'll often mention somebody else, some other eccentric, ostracized expert, and then you go study that person, and that person will be really good. So it's almost like you have to go through that to get to the good stuff. Same thing with Amazon. You can read 10 books on diabetes on Amazon. 9 in a row will be pieces of crap, dishonest, wrong, stupid. But the 10th one will be good. And it'll mention something that's great. Then you go find that extra person, and that person will be the best one. You'll discover Gerald Shulman, Roy Taylor, people like that. Okay, I discovered some great stuff. I read every book I could on atherosclerosis, and I found Sloop, and he's the best one, the atherothrombosis theory. I read every book I could on hypertension, then I found Richard Moore. He's the best one. So you kind of have to go through that. It's nice when you got somebody like Dr. McDougall, and he's already figured out, that Kempner was a genius, and that other people did magnificent things. Burkitt, Pritikin, Swank, etc. So you can go right to their books. Read Burkitt, read Swank, read Pritikin, okay? So that's nice to have somebody like that, a polymath, genius guy himself like McDougall. And look at McDougall. In the nutritional world, everybody's like, oh, of course, everybody knows McDougall. But you don't understand something. McDougall is an outcast, ostracized from conventional medicine. Okay, first of all, he trained in podunk, like Wayne State or some other, little tiny program. Nobody's ever heard of it, all right? And then he did his internship and residency in Hawaii. You talk to an Ivy League person, they'll go, what is Hawaii? Hawaii's some, tropical, third world banana republic country, okay? Who cares about Hawaii? Nothing academic comes out of Hawaii. So what I'm trying to say is that's how they look, not invented in our place, not invented in our place. So they look down on that. But, he's established himself in the nutrition world over all these decades. But I'm trying to tell you, from a conventional medicine point of view, he would be a nobody, okay? And he's not in any of the books. None of them are. Okay, what else? Rookies and neophytes, even when their book's not that good, they'll often mention that they've discovered somebody great. For example, Eric Metaxas, he's a really good writer. He wrote a book called Is Atheism Dead? Okay, and he's no scientist, but he's real smart, and he did a good job summarizing things. But he mentioned Jim Tour, and Jim Tour is like this genius synthetic chemist, and you watch him, and he's got brilliant lectures on origin of life, chemistry, and all that kind of stuff. Sometimes I read this, I was trying to understand teeth, so I read a whole bunch of dental books, and one was kind of a lightweight dental book, but it mentioned Robert Gamal. And Gamal's got the best dental book, something like the garbage disposal book with a big cover of a garbage dumpster on the cover, but it's the best dental book, and his website's the best one for dentistry, realdentalinfo.com. Okay, you read the survivor books, and a lot of them will be crazy, and maybe they just got lucky, but then you come across some great ones. Ruth Heidrich, Janet Murray, Dr. Day, for example. Brilliant people and geniuses are often quite eccentric, so you need to give them slack. If you're going to try to hold them to standards of being moral saints, you're going to be disappointed because they're not, and a lot of times they're pretty obnoxious. So you have to be willing to just cut them some slack and see what they have to say. In general, old people are much better than young people when it comes to nutrition and health because people less than 40, I don't think I've ever in my life seen a good lecture on health or medicine from a person less than 40 years of age. They just don't know anything. And guys in particular, they're kind of in this macho mindset. I need, more protein. I need good fats to build my muscle. I'm going to drink raw eggs like Rocky in the Rocky movie, stuff like that. So young guys are notoriously stupid and incompetent when it comes to being less than 40 talking about health or nutrition. And you can have a guy like Anthony Jay. I think he's a brilliant PhD biochemist. He wrote the best book ever on estrogen chemicals, The Estrogen Generation. He's got a good YouTube channel, Dr. Anthony Jay. But when it comes to nutrition, I don't think he knows his head from his butt. And he also has been interviewed on the Bro Science Circus, so he's not going to be allowed to talk about low-fat vegan anyways. But he's a perfect example of a young guy who's great in his own field of expertise but doesn't know nutrition. Usually people less than 50 don't know anything. And the reason that happens in nutrition and health is that it's not until you get in your late 40s, early 50s that you start seeing friends, relatives, people dying of heart attacks and cancer, and you start taking things a lot more seriously. And once you do that, you'll start reading more of this non-conventional literature. A typical doctor, by the age of 50 will only have read conventional literature. They won't know anything, zero, about non-conventional literature. And I know a lot of AOAs, top 10% of their class, and they have not read anything outside of conventional medicine. But after 50, when they start seeing more and more people dying, conventional medicine not working, they start getting frustrated, and they're more likely to look for answers and start reading a wider variety of information sources. Young people are also, when it comes to medicine and health, they're usually a bunch of chicken shits, and it's for a good reason. They're trying to make tenure at a university, so they don't want to rock the boat. They're trying to get, promoted to partner in a big group. They don't want to rock the boat. So they just will tend to be chicken shits, okay? I can remember a perfect example. I gave a lecture one time at a neurologic diseases place, okay? And, one of the guys there was a neuroradiologist, and he was real enthusiastic. He's like, oh, you're so smart, you're so interesting. He wanted to hear everything I had to say. And then I contradicted some of the textbook theories because I know my theories are better. And he got all freaked out. He would never communicate with me ever again after that because he knew that I was refuting the theories that his boss goes by at one of the universities, and he did not want that. You contradicted the theory of Alzheimer's. My boss does research in Alzheimer's. I can't talk to you ever again about cognitive decline. And I'm like, well, too bad, pal. I don't go by the conventions because I know they suck. I know Alzheimer's research is a joke. So what I'm trying to say is young guys are always going to be worried about that. And they kind of have to be. They got a young wife and kids at home, and they got to not rock the boat. At least they think they do in order to get promoted to partner. Whereas an old guy is more likely to be pissed off. He's been ignored for over 30 years. He wants to leave a good legacy. He wants to do something useful with his life. He wants people to know what he achieved. He's been talking about it for 35, 40 years, so he knows it backwards and forwards, and he can explain it clearly. So he can put it all together in a coherent whole. Very few people can do that. So old guys are the best ones. Okay. So anyways, that's how you find good information on the internet. It's out there, but it takes effort to find it. But at least it's out there. The truth is not dead. It's simply hidden, but it's out there. So anyways, hope you found that helpful.